Welcome everyone to our online seminar, Beyond Borders, European Perspective on the UK's Asylum and Migration Context. My name is Domenica Pecoraro, and I serve in Canterbury Diocese as the Kent Refugee Programs Manager, and I serve the whole church as Community Sponsorship Rep. This seminar is organized by Canterbury Diocese Social Justice Network, the A World of Neighbours Network, and the Home Affairs team at the Church of England. I would like to thank our panel and all of you who have made time to be here tonight, especially during this busy period. On International Migrants Day, we will discuss the UK's asylum and migration context with a focus on safe and legal routes from a European perspective. We will listen to faith leaders and practitioners highlighting the active role that the voluntary and community sector, faith communities and civil society can play. We believe that safe and legal routes are the best vessel for people to find sanctuary in the UK, and we would like to see safe and legal routes grow. We are honored to have with us tonight a wealth of expertise in the room, giving us an insight into what it means to seek sanctuary in the Netherlands, Hungary, Poland, and France, as well as insight on community sponsorship and community-led welcome in the UK. We will ask our speakers to give us a glimpse of their country asylum and refuge policies, whether there are safe and legal routes in place, and what actions and initiatives have worked well in their country. Because of the wealth of expertise in the room, I'm sure we are going to come up with questions, and there will be time for Q&A at the end. Please do post your questions in the chat, and we will identify a few questions for panelists. Without further ado, I'm honored to introduce our first speaker, the Right Reverend Paul Butler, Bishop of Durham. Bishop Paul is Lord Spiritual and speaks for the Church of England in the House of Lords on issues regarding migration and refuge in the UK. And Bishop Paul is also a trustee at Reset. Thank you, Bishop Paul.
Thank you, Domenica and Will. I've been asked to focus particularly on the Illegal Migration Act, but I want to try and set it in some context. So for the context, you need to think back to the UK's decision to leave the European community. One of the themes of Brexit was take back control of our borders. It meant free movement of people within Europe and the UK was stopped. It was thought at the time that immigration numbers would therefore automatically fall. However, immigration numbers, rather than falling, have risen and have risen significantly. Net migration in 2022 reached 745,000, the highest ever. But where people come from has changed drastically. India, Nigeria, China, Pakistan, and Ukraine. A very small number from the EU. It's largely students and health and social care workers, plus a growing number of family members of both students and health and social care workers. The number of asylum seekers has also risen, as of course it has across the whole of Europe. At the end of June 23, in the previous 12 months, 90,000 asylum seekers arrived, largely via boats. Stop the boats is the key slogan. It was for Boris Johnson and has become so for Rishi Sunak. The first attempt at something new was the Nationality and Borders Act. This, though, is deemed to have failed to produce the results that was hoped. So it was added to and to some extent superseded by the Illegal Migration Act. However, I want to point out that the Nationality and Borders Act is still in place, and some of the provisions come from that act, not from the Illegal Migration Act. The Illegal Migration Act has a very clear purpose. It's stated in Clause 1 to prevent and deter unlawful migration, and in particular, migration by unsafe and illegal routes, by requiring the removal from the UK of certain persons. It includes the fact that people who arrive by illegal and unsafe routes, that they will be permanently denied the leave to remain in the United Kingdom, and that they will be denied most routes to British citizenship forever. There are not really many exemptions, but there are a few that can be used for appeal. And although unaccompanied children are far less likely to be removed, it's not impossible for them to be removed, but once they reach the age of 18, it would be standard procedure to remove them. The bill also increases the use of detention significantly. So the centrality is removal. Now, this is why we now have a new bill, the Safety of Rwanda, brackets, Asylum and Immigration, close brackets, bill. Because the removal was to be to Rwanda. The Supreme Court, of course, ruled that this was not legal. So the new bill, its intent is to make it legal to remove people to Rwanda. Please note, there are no other agreements in place for removal to any other third country. And so far as one can ascertain, if there have been any conversations about making such agreements, they are certainly not known publicly. And given that the Rwanda one did leak, there have been no other leaks. Further, there's only one agreement to return people in place, and that's to Albania, and that has been quite effective. Actually, the detention is taking place at the moment. Most people are in hotels, but the Bibi Stockholm, which is the barge down in Weymouth, and just last week, the government won a legal case, which means that the two former Royal Air Force bases at Scampton and Wethersfield will be prepared for the detention of asylum seekers. Here's another bit of the setting, though. There was a commitment to clear the backlog of what's called the legacy backlog of those who had been waiting a long time. This has involved a massive increase in the number of people involved in helping, and actually they are very close to clearing that backlog by the 31st of December, which was the intention. It is a very small number who are not yet cleared that way through. However, and the number of people who have been accepted as genuine refugees is the highest number the UK has ever accepted. As a percentage, those who have been refused is one of the smallest percentages ever, but there is quite a large number in the middle who are deemed that their application has been withdrawn. I won't go into the details of how that's come about. However, of course, the number who've arrived who are deemed inadmissible keeps rising. And these are in a legal limbo because there's nowhere to remove them at present legally, and they're not allowed to claim asylum because their claim would be deemed inadmissible. And there aren't return agreements in place. So we have a growing number in the tens of thousands of people in legal limbo. Alongside this, there's been recent changes to the immigration rules, which will make it much harder for family members in particular to join people, but also much harder for people to come to lower income jobs. So overall, we have a negative climate, and in which asylum seekers are easily identified as the group to attack although they are actually only a small percentage of the overall numbers of people arriving in the UK from overseas. There is a commitment to provide proper, safe and legal routes. However, that consultation has not been very widely advertised, and there is a conviction that they have to stop the boats first and then provide proper and safe and legal routes, rather than come up with safe and legal routes straight away. There is a recognition there needs to be greater collaboration with Europe, but seems to be a reluctance to actually do anything about that. And finally, what there really needs to be is a focus on stopping the traffickers and the trafficking gangs. These are major international criminal gangs who are extremely hard to get to. The masterminds behind them are extremely hard to get to. But that's really where the focus ought to be, rather than on those who are being trafficked, who, as we all know, are generally very vulnerable and very often, in about 80% of the cases recently, are genuine refugees. So that's the overall setting that I was asked to give, and I think I've probably run out of time.
Thank you so much, Bishop Paul. You have not run out of time. Thank you so much. This was an informative, a really informative contribution. Thank you. So this is the situation in the UK. The inadmissibility criteria brought in by the Illegal Migration Act, and the need to open up safe and legal routes, and perhaps to reimagine a dialogue beyond borders, also with our European friends. It would be wonderful now to understand what the situation is in the Netherlands. And to do so, we have a wonderful speaker. I would like to introduce you to Rico Woolberg. Rico is the director at A World of Neighbours. A World of Neighbours is a European interfaith network where people of different faiths and origin can support and learn from one another in their encounters with refugees and migrants. Rico, what's the situation in the Netherlands, and what's the situation for people seeking sanctuary in the Netherlands? Thank you.
Thank you, Domenica, and thank you all for being here and exchanging these views on the different situations in Europe. And indeed privileged to serve at the World of Neighbours with accomplished practitioners like Martha Bobo, you'll hear in a minute, and Domenica herself. The Netherlands, it's been in the news lately for not the best of reasons, with our elections results, got some quite right-wing people trying to form a government at the moment. But also 1.5 years ago, I think that's where I start when it's about the Netherlands. You might have all seen the images of Ter Apel, which is our only reception center in the Netherlands, way up north. Netherlands is small, but also there are places that are hard to reach. Well, that's where you put a first reception center. So, and we had hundreds of people sleeping outside. Family, children, tents were taken away by the police. Like all these things we have seen at the borders, outside borders of Europe, are happening in the Netherlands. And this last idea of the Netherlands as being a very open country where everybody is migrating in and out, well, that's long gone. And at the moment we have the same reception center is overloaded completely. We have 84 regular locations, regular asylum seeker centers, where about 30,000 people, a bit more, are staying. But there's 145 emergency locations, where about 30,000 people are staying as well. So there's as many people in regular asylum seeker centers as are in emergency locations. And that's trouble because people there have hardly any privacy. It's very dirty. We've been told by the European Commission for Human Rights that this is an unlivable situation. Children can't go to school. There's thousands of children in the emergency locations, and there seems to be no end of it. Part of the reason is that a quarter of all asylum seekers in the Netherlands are still waiting for a house. They already have a status, but they can't move out of the asylum seeker centers because there has been huge cuts on the social housing programs. So that's why there's hardly any place, and this is troublesome for everybody. We had our government that fell over family reunification just a couple of months ago, and that's been a hard push from the right and the center, so to speak, liberal parties to say to crack down on newcomers and new incoming people, because in the Netherlands there is this broad feeling on the right and also the liberal side that we can't handle it anymore, as in many places in Europe, of course. One of the ideas is that we should postpone family reunification as part of a wider package of measurements, and one of them was already in place, and that was that the Netherlands decided to end on their part the one-on-one ruling of the EU-Turkey deal. So the idea was that everybody who was deported from Greece back to Turkey, one person from Syria or another country could come to the Netherlands. That will be 1,000 a year. The Netherlands have done their part in it. I mean, there were 6,000 people still to come, but they stopped that deal. So that's what's happening for other ways to come to the Netherlands. There are not many other ways to come to the Netherlands than the difficult route, so the irregular crossing of borders, and then try to find your way into the Netherlands. There is no community sponsorship in place. There's different attempts to start with community sponsorship, but it's nothing is possible yet. There is sponsorship for recognized sponsor, but only for high-skilled foreign nationals. So that's a very, very strict measurement. And overall, that was 2019, but I guess it didn't change. We have one of the strictest asylum laws in Europe, which not everybody would think, but one of the reasons is that we have this long list of safe countries. There was 32 countries on the list of safe third countries. Which means a very short asylum seekers procedure and people being pushed back or sent back or deported or staying in the streets. So at the moment we have only 500 people that are resettled that are very in vulnerable situations resettled by the UNHCR. That was 750. But that changed. I'll come back to that in a minute. One of the questions you had, like, were there any positive actions that changed policy one way or another? And the one that was had quite a big impact was the church asylum we did. There was a family of which the kids were longer than 5 years in the Netherlands, and there was still no result in their case. So the church gave them asylum because they were about to be deported, and they had a 3 months non-stop service, 24 hours a day. It was news all over the world, and of course big discussions in the Netherlands. And after this 3 months, indeed, there was a children's pardon agreement to reopen 600 to 800 cases of children that had been longer than 5 years in the Netherlands. And that was a big win, but it came with great costs as well. And that, of course, usually happens in these cases. But one of them was that for new cases, it wouldn't be possible to have their cases reopened in this way. We used to have a possibility to go to the Minister of Foreign Affairs to say like, hey, for this particular case, you should really check this case and reopen it. This possibility was removed. There was we were relocating 700 or resettling 750 people from outside the EU via this UNHCR scheme, and that was lowered to 500. So this result, this protest that had this much impact, came also with great costs. And at the moment, they're still working on protests at the Ter Apel situation, just putting it on the map. There has been a big protest which we led on the relocation deals with Turkey and Greece, which get a lot of attention but didn't really change the government. At the moment, we are facing, well, a whole new government that's as right-wing as you can imagine, and we're not sure what will come out of it. But one of the things that already happened is that 3.4 billion euros that were supposed to be spent on development cooperation with developing countries are going to be spent on housing for asylum seekers in the Netherlands. So you see how, well, Pastor Paul Butler said, take control of our borders. Well, that's also the slogan in the Netherlands. We're fighting it, but it's not easy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rico. Thank you. That's, I don't know how many of us really got to understand what the situation is in Netherlands. And thank you so much for opening our eyes and get us more informed on what happens, what's happening beyond our borders in the UK. Yeah,
just to add one thing, it's not that we try to compare like which is worse. We're in this together. I mean,
yes.
it's all across Europe and there's slight differences. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Pastor Marta Bolba. Marta is the Lutheran pastor at the Mandak House of Budapest 8th District. Pastor Marta Bolba is deeply engaged in refugees and migrant work in Budapest, and she also leads a community center in Budapest called Devai Inn. Thank you, Marta. I think Marta has a presentation. And
yeah. Can you help me with the presentation?
Of course.
Thank you.
I can see your presentation. Can everybody see the presentation?
Yeah, so I just wanted to show you my questions. So those are the questions we are discussing today. And so I cannot forward it, so please. And I wanted to share you about our past, because we had detention centers also, and still we have, but in Hungary we made a fence to protect our borders towards Serbia. Several pushbacks happened, so altogether in 1 year maybe 30 asylum applications were just received, and 50,000 pushbacks happened, and today maybe 100,000 pushbacks are happening. So Hungary doesn't have a functional asylum system now, and I wanted to show you a photo about these transit zones. The Hungarian Helsinki Committee was successful to shutting down these transit zones. These were detention centers, like family prisons. You can see the containers, I don't know if you know that Hungary has deserts. So you can see that no trees or no plants are present. So nothing which lives here. And it's really hot in the summer times in those containers. And families spend here 1 year or more than 1 year to just wait. And it was a really hopeless situation because they were not presented with information, and the authorities told them that they are free to go into the direction of Serbia. If they want to go, just leave. It's not a prison. You can leave towards Serbia, and then you lose the possibility to apply for asylum and to get processed. So it was a really tricky way. I had colleagues, pastors, who visited regularly these centers and played with the children, but it was not really education. You can see this playground for the children. And sometimes it happened that for 6 days they couldn't eat. So it was really harmful. And in the court of Strasbourg, the Hungarian Helsinki Committee could win those law cases of torture that happened here in Tompa and Röszke. And finally, those transit zones could, it is closed now, but it took the Helsinki Committee 3.5 years to close those down. It happened after 2015, and in almost 2 years now they are closed down, and let us see what happens next with our asylum system in Hungary. Please, Dominika, can you? So this is the Ukrainian situation, but before that I wanted to share the other one. So you can see the Ukrainians coming from the north part of Hungary. So in Hungary, the Ukrainians are transiting the country. So a few Ukrainians want to stay here, but 1.8 million Ukrainians just passed through the country. And we have the applications here. How many were granted this temporary protection? And this is 32,000 applicants, and 28,000 positive decisions were taken. And people are tumbling back and forth, and maybe some more Ukrainians are present in the country because of the double citizens, or this Transcarpathian region, Hungarian and Ukrainian double citizenship, and they are native Hungarian and also Ukrainian, and they cannot apply for temporary protection because they are also Hungarian citizens. But they also are here, and some of them, and most of them, are Roma, and this is a minority in Ukraine and also in Hungary, and the Roma people are really disadvantaged and sometimes illiterate, so they cannot read and write. They have large families, and they were really excluded from all the social benefits in Ukraine. And the grandmas can read and write and have vocation schools, and they have like these basic skills, but the second generation, the mothers and also the children, never went to school because the school system in that region totally is completely broken. So in the times of the Soviet Union, it was functioning, so the grandmas can read and write, and the second generation not. So it's also a problem with the Hungarian education system, that what happens with them. Please, the next. I wanted to show you our government structure, that we have a Minister of Interior. He's one person responsible for all these 30 fields. And it's the truth in the Hungarian government that this guy, who is a police officer, is responsible for the fixed responsibilities, immigration and asylum. And also he is responsible for the whole healthcare system and for the whole education system and for the whole social system. So it means that we don't have any individual representative for those big national systems. And you can see the consequences of them. So our healthcare system and also education system is like dying right now because of that. And so not just the asylum system, but every other big system is like falling apart right now. And please the next. His name is Sándor Pintér. The Helsinki Committee. So Hungary is not having any functional asylum system right now. That's why we have to change our system to get these EU funds for like this cohesion fund. And so our government tried to change something, but it was not really effective. So after these detention centers, these transit zones, which I showed you in a picture, they introduced in 2020 the embassy system, which is the situation is that you have to apply for asylum in an embassy in Belgrade or in Kiev. So Kiev is now in war, so you won't go there. So it's only one possibility for you if you want to ask for asylum. You have to go to Belgrade and apply for it. And it's a really long procedure. You have to wait there months to get an appointment, and then you even they can deny for your appointment. But if you have a hearing, then at that point they discuss your case. That's why we have only like 30 cases of refugees in the country, or so really small amount, because we don't have a system for that, or this embassy system, which is like a joke, so it's not a functioning system. So please, the other. So I wanted to show you some websites. The Hungarian Helsinki Committee has in English really thoughtful writings about no real commitment to restoring the rule of law, and you can read it if you wish to have more insight. And please the other. And also we have another situation to Ukrainians. So with this temporary protection system is not the same as the asylum system. So I ran out of time, and so I wanted to share with you this, and thank you that you shared from our perspective as well. It's very good to hear the others, the situation in other countries.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Marta. I think that the work that Pastor Marta Bolba is doing in Budapest is vital. And also all the the knowledge and expertise that she brings into the Avon network and all the knowledge that you brought to us today. We are very thankful for that. So thank you. Thank you so much. And as Rico said, we are in this together. And so our next speaker will provide an insight in what's happening in the Polish-Belarusian border. And we are very grateful to have with us Sarian Yarosh. Sarian is an advocacy specialist and research coordinator in Migration Consortium at Grupa Garnica. Grupa Garnica is a social movement that challenges how the authorities respond to those in need of humanitarian protection on the Polish-Belarusian border. Grupa Garnica assists forced migrants who find themselves on the Polish territory and monitor human rights violations. The movement includes activists from all over Poland, including residents of border areas and a growing number of NGOs. Thank you so much, Sarian.
Thank you very much for this introduction. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Do you hear me well? Cool. Oh, cool. Thank you for all of the fingers. So I would like to introduce you a little bit to what we have right now in Poland. I decided maybe I will not use presentation because it's just 7 minutes. Right now we are facing two humanitarian crises, both for one at the Polish-Belarusian border and one at the Polish-Ukrainian border. As you probably know, Poland, Marta already mentioned in case of Hungary, in case of Poland, 17 million refugees came from Ukraine through the border and over to state. Not all of them Ukrainians, also third country nationals, Roma Ukrainians, Magyar Ukrainians who before were in Hungary. And at the very same time, we have one protracted humanitarian crisis at the Polish-Belarusian border with over 30,000 refugees stripped in the forest at the border, treated as illegal migrants, even though their asylum claims are not taken, not acquired by the border guards. And at the very same time, we have two other crises that are protracted and we are still as NGOs working with. One of them is evacuation of Afghani. Many of the Polish organizations are still working with the Afghani evacuated in 2021. Right after this, a lot of Afghani refugees came through Belarus to Poland or tried to, but then they were violently pushed back to Belarus against the standards of international law and non-refoulement rule in the Geneva Convention. And half a year after the Polish-Belarusian crisis started, the full-scale invasion, Russian invasion to Ukraine started as well. And it really affected and transformed our, let's say, third sector, non-governmental sector in Poland, which is the main responder of the humanitarian assistance. Sorry, main responder of this humanitarian crisis, and also organizing and coordinating the reception and integration of refugees. So at the very same time, we see how intertwined those crises are. Sorry, I mentioned one more crisis. I mean, 2020 protests in Belarus under the Lukashenko's regime. Many of the refugees from Belarus of Belarusian nationality came to Poland. And right now we have four completely different crises, two human rights crises and two humanitarian crises that we are facing and dealing as the same organizations. I will tell you more about Polish-Belarusian border today, but of course I'm very open, as I investigated as well with Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch as well, the situation at the Polish-Ukrainian border. So I would like to tell you, maybe starting from the double humanitarian standard. This is the situation we are facing right now. That we see that Poland is divided, especially Polish government, but also INGOs and other international actors, human rights actors are, let's say, quite selective with who deserves and who doesn't deserve the humanitarian assistance. the undeserving refugees at the Polish-Belarusian border who are violently pushed back to Belarus, very often tortured. We so far know of almost 60 documented deaths at the Polish territory, and almost 35 deaths at the Belarus, in Belarus, of those refugees. But at the very same time, we know about at least 300 to 400 missing people. We started working in August 2021. I would like to tell you that part of this double standard is the criminalization. That the humanitarian assistance from the very beginning is criminalized, highly criminalized, with the charges of espionage and charges of facilitation of migration, with the very strong narrative of Polish humanitarian assistants and activists, but also local activists from the border areas, treated or charged as smugglers, even though there is no proofs. And also we are from the very beginning very vocal about legality of our actions. We are working with the main legal actors, but also with the European Court of Justice, European Court of Human Rights, and many others, other international actors, Amnesty as well, documenting the scale of our assistance. Nevertheless, we see this division between hospitality and hostility, especially after the invasion to Ukraine. And yes, hostility at the Polish-Belarusian border and hospitality at the Polish-Ukrainian border. But at the very same time, I would, from our first-hand experience, would like to tell you that even this hospitality is very illusory, in the case that this hospitality is mainly from the private individuals, from the civil society of Poland, from the Ukrainian minority, from the religious and faith-based organizations, but not necessarily from the local or central authorities, who very often delegate the tasks for the humanitarian assistance and integration to third sector. So there are many different aspects of this hostility and hospitality. I would maybe just give you a little bit of the timeline before I finish. Initially, it started in August 2021. I'm happy also to provide later some materials on that and digital reconstructions and movies that we did with Amnesty. I think they're a bit more informative than my chaotic speech. But at the very beginning, in August, there was a group of 32 Afghani refugees. We documented the first pushback in the small city of Usnash, and we started acting as activists at the borders. But at the very same time, I have to say we were very naive with thinking that this first pushback will be, this moment of realization from the authorities. It wasn't. Actually, right now, I think we documented over 40,000 pushbacks in 2.5 years. And all of them, although they are against the standards of EU and also EU law and UN Geneva Convention, they are still happening even today. At the very same time, in September 2021, the Polish president, Andrzej Duda, has introduced the state of emergency, and against the constitution of Poland, it was prolonged 3 times. So it actually took 9 months, which was practically cutting off the whole region, border region of Poland, and affected very much local communities. Yes. Maybe I would also mention that one of the main criminalized actors was the Catholic organization, a club of Catholic intelligence, which was raided by the police and border guards, and the activists who were working there were charged with the facilitation of migration. Fortunately, just recently, I think 2 months ago, the case was dismissed by the court. But we see also that we already have this 8 years long experience of criminalization of many forms of activism in Poland. So many of those cases are expected to be prolonged as strategic litigation against public participation. What I want to tell you now, maybe just finishing, yes, I know. So yes, I would say that right now where we are now, dividing our strength between 2 borders, and at the very same time facing the exit strategy from INGOs who are leaving Poland even with the support of Ukraine, but at the very same time reluctance of the state authorities, even though our government has changed just recently, is I would say compassion fatigue. that the Polish civil society and Polish private hosts who are practically responsible, but they were very often delegated the task in the absence of state or local authorities to take the responsibility for the support to refugees from both Belarusian border but also Ukrainian border, are right now at the moment of so-called compassion fatigue. We see the rise of anti-refugee, anti-Ukrainian, anti-Belarusian rhetorics in media, in politics. We see generally the level of frustration and tensions, but also cases of labor exploitation, sexploitation, violence in the collective accommodation centers, prolonged detention centers, and at the very same time, very dire consequences in the refugee centers, detention centers, in which we have cases of refugees trying to commit suicide under the detention. So many of those who leave those 10 centers, both from Polish-Belarusian and Polish-Ukrainian border, they don't want to stay in Poland because of the traumatic experience they faced. And psychological help that we provide is not provided by the state, is provided by us, main, let's say, responders. So right now what we see is that we are tired, and everyone who helped was tired because it's been almost 3 years. And at the very same time, let's say, there is the lack of resources, the lack of stability, but also the lack of perspectives that the authorities will take upon this role, this humanitarian role, and the INGOs and private sector will leave, is leaving us with this very dire situation in which we are in the situation of so-called humanitarian blackmail, in which we are not ready to continue on this scale on many different levels, but it's not really the choice anymore. So sorry if I was hoping I'm going somewhere positive, but I see I will leave you with this bit of a winter depression. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sarian. You have provided such an insight into what's happening in Poland and on the Polish-Belarusian border. Thank you so much. I don't know how much, what you said gets to the UK. So thank you. Thank you so much. We are now going to look at the situation in northern France together with Braden Muhlenberg. Braden is the Anglican refugee support lead for the Church of Europe. This is a partnership with USPG and the Diocese of Canterbury. And Braden reports on the conditions of those exiled in northern France and is investing in the role of faith communities and what faith communities, what role they can play in the area. Thank you so much, Braden.
Hello. There's a lot familiar in what the other speakers have spoken to, and actually when Bishop Paul talked about used the word limbo, it's familiar and difficult to hear that that's what's awaiting most of the people that come to northern France are hoping and wanting to cross over to the UK. But yeah, there's a kind of a limbo here too, where many people live with this feeling of not feeling that both the UK doesn't want them, but also France doesn't want them. So it kind of raises questions, I think, for a lot of people, normal questions of why don't people just claim asylum in France? So I'll try to speak a little bit just about the French asylum system too. Maybe it's helpful to just to give a little picture, because it can be very very tough situation, very negative in northern France, especially like recently. There's a couple of months ago, up to like 4,000 people that are kind of stranded here, and a lot of the people that are here, they're kind of in this legal limbo too, because most of the time when people come to France, they've already passed through another country. I mean, they've made this journey across the Mediterranean, very traumatic, very difficult, and then I don't know if you know about the Dublin procedure, but a lot of times people have, or I mean, almost all the time, people have their fingerprints taken in the first country that they arrive in the Schengen zone, and that can cause difficulty in people settling in France when they're here, because when people, like, if people apply for asylum, they go to the French Office for the Protection of Asylum Seekers and Stateless Persons, or that's the agency that handles things, and so basically they can kind of have three different responses when they apply for asylum. They can have a normal sort of procedure. They can be on a fast track, but it sounds good, but it's actually a lot of times it's not good news for them, or it means that their claim is less likely to be approved. And even when they appeal, because there's a court that you can appeal to, the CNDA. And instead of seeing 3 judges, they'll see 1. A lot of times it has to do with I mean, it's sort of a negative reaction to their asylum claim for many different reasons. But then the third thing that I mentioned is they can be in this Dublin procedure, which means that it means putting their life in this kind of limbo on hold for 6 months, even up to 18 months, depending on the situation. And I think that's for me why I think community welcome in many different forms. I mean, ideally, if we have, things with the working hand in hand with the government for communities to welcome, I think it can, beyond having extra, I mean, being able to welcome people without them having to make these dangerous voyages across the Mediterranean or across the English Channel. It can send the message to people that they are welcome too, which I think can mean a whole lot for people putting down roots in a place. A lot of times when people come to Calais, sometimes I think they're looking for community too, even community just with people from the same place as them, and there are large groups of different communities, and they welcome each other. But I think what I see in Calais is when we, especially as faith communities, we welcome people. It can make just spend time with people, just be present. It can make a big difference, at least in that moment. Well, I can speak a little bit to one of the questions was about. It's not really directly connected to my work, but about there is like humanitarian corridors, for example. There's a community in Italy. I don't know if maybe some of you have heard of Sant'Egidio. So there is something set up in France with Sant'Egidio, a humanitarian corridor from Lebanon, where I think since 2017, there's been, I think, well, at least between 2017 and 2021, there are 504 people who were welcomed through this. I think, so there are people that were in Lebanon, but coming from Syria, coming from Iraq. And I mean, to be honest with you, I can have a reaction inside of myself thinking that it's such a small number compared to there's, I think, 110 million displaced people globally, I think. But I actually, before I started this role, I had the privilege of and the honor of meeting a few of these people welcomed through this humanitarian corridor. I was a volunteer, or I volunteered alongside them in Taizé, an ecumenical community in France. And I think that's the thing for me. We can be discouraged, by sometimes even these small numbers of options for people to come legally and safely. But for this one Yazidi woman, I think it made a big difference, to not have the extra trauma of going through the long journeys that we meet people in Calais all the time who've been through some of the most difficult yeah, situations imaginable. There's also, I mean, with the UNHCR, France has, I think since 2008, they had like a bilateral agreement to welcome 100 people every year. And then since, I mean, I think 2014 to 2015, there was 500 Syrians that were welcomed. 2016, 2017, I think the number, so it's pretty much, there was like 3,657. So pretty consistently every 2 years or so, there's been about 3,000 people welcomed in France. So in, you know, for those 3,000 people, that's very, very good news too. It's not the, you know, it's not the majority of the people that are the exiled people that are in France, but, and then, you know, in 2022, in addition to that, there was 100,000 Ukrainians as well. So I mean, yeah, I mean, there are limits to this too, but well, one of the things, like unaccompanied minors would never be included in that group, because there's a very specific way that minors are welcomed, and it's one thing that we see in Calais. There's often up to 50 unaccompanied minors in Calais, and then sometimes the same number near Dunkirk too. And that's where you see, well, at different points, there was a house that the Catholic Church owned that welcome, or different properties. Even the place that I'm standing right now, or I'm sitting, there were minors that were welcomed here for a period of time until the city closed it down. I mean, there's been lots of encouraging community welcome in northern France. I mean, both in houses of hospitality, faith-based, and otherwise, but also in even just ordinary people, who, I mean, there are a lot of children that are sleeping out on the streets, and when people are sleeping inside, it's because individuals make a choice to open up to them. So that's where, yeah, I think I really believe that, yeah, faith-based groups and individuals and communities have a big part to play in changing the trend that we see now. I mean, there's lots of good news even in the French system. There's no talk of, for the moment, of externalizing the border, like kind of the UK sort of started the ball rolling, and some other European countries are following, or maybe Australia started it before that. But there is, yeah, I think that's probably all my time. There's many other things. Even with a law last week that was voted to not be debated, that would have made things difficult for people. So there's good news too, along with a lot of difficulties here in northern France and other places in France.
Thank you so much, Braden. Thank you, because you are, again, as all our panelists here, is an eye within a shared vision of welcoming. And thank you so much for your testimony from Northern France. Let's go back to the UK, and with what Bishop Paul highlighted at the very beginning, with the inadmissibility criteria of the Legal Migration Act 2023, at the moment, really safe and legal routes are the best vessel, as always, for people to avoid dangerous crossing, avoid years of being stranded in unsafe countries, when what people need is a place to call home, to flourish in safety. So let's have a look at the UK context with Julia Randolph. Julia works at Reset, and she's the community building coordinator. For those of you who don't know, Reset is the leading UK charity for community sponsorship. It was formed in 2018 to grow the community sponsorship movement in the UK. So far, Reset has supported more than 300 community groups to welcome over 1,000 refugees in the UK. Giulia.
Thank you, Dominika. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see it. Yes, it's not.
Yes, you just need to, if you can make it
Make it big.
bigger.
Yeah,
Thank you, Giulia.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about community sponsorship, and I think it's going to leave us on a little bit more of a positive note. Community sponsorship is something that I'm extremely passionate about, so I'm going to use a chunk of my time today to show this great video that explains what community sponsorship is from the people that are on the ground and involved in it every day. Rather than me talking about it for 10 minutes, I'm gonna have a big chunk of my time for that. So I'm gonna run through a few details and then we're gonna watch this great video. So as Dominika said, Reset works to empower volunteers to welcome refugees into communities across the UK. So we do have several different programs, but one of our biggest programs is community sponsorship. A few things that make community sponsorship unique are, you can welcome through the UK resettlement scheme under community sponsorship. And in the UK resettlement scheme, you have a much broader global reach. So the UK resettlement scheme started in 2021. And prior to that, it was more country specific. So you could only welcome refugees from Syria, for example. But now you can welcome refugees from the entire globe. And we have seen an increase in the diversity of refugees that have arrived in the UK since we started welcoming under UK resettlement scheme. Another amazing element of community sponsorship is that refugees welcomed through community sponsorship are in addition to any local authority pledges. So essentially, in one sense, if you're participating in community sponsorship, you're exceeding those target numbers, which is really incredible. And also families are brought to the UK from abroad. So how the process works is families are identified by UNHCR in their host country or their country of asylum. They're then referred to the home office and then they're allocated to the group. So as a community sponsorship group, you apply to the home office and then you're allocated a family to support them in their integration. I know Dominika is going to go into more detail about that, but here's a brief overview of what a community sponsorship group could look like. So it could be anybody in a community, which I think is absolutely amazing. And this is one of the biggest valuable parts of community sponsorship, because it's just people coming together and offering their skills that they've developed throughout their lives to support and help other people, help refugee families integrate into their communities. So it's normally made up of 8 to 12 members, but that can vary greatly. And you normally have different leads for the different sectors of support that you are going to offer the family. So for example, you have a language lead who is in charge of setting up ESOL classes and arranging interpreters. You might have an education lead if the family has children, so that you can get them signed up for school. So it's almost covering all of your bases in terms of integration, which is why community sponsorship is kind of that full package of support. So in terms of a group's commitment, so you sign up for 12 months of support, but 24 months of accommodation. So you sign a 2-year tenancy or the family signs a 2-year tenancy from their date of arrival. You help them with access to benefits, healthcare, language learning, employment, all those necessary things to achieve independence in the UK. You also arrange interpretation where required. You have to fundraise £9,000, which seems like a lot, but groups actually have found it fairly once they get started and get the ball rolling, that hasn't been one of the biggest challenges. And then you're also required to participate in some monitoring and evaluation for the Home Office. Reset. So our role is to spread awareness of community sponsorship. We also provide advice and guidance. We review groups' applications before they're submitted to the Home Office to help prevent delays. And we provide trainings, which is mainly my role. So there are 2 mandatory trainings that the Home Office requires groups to participate in before they welcome a family. One that is before they even submit their application, and then one right before they're about to welcome the family. So we talk about things like setting boundaries, cultural differences, managing expectations, and setting them up for success in a sense. And then Reset also manages the post-arrival support visits, which are just a method of evaluation for the program. Okay, enough of me talking. I'm going to show you guys this great video that's very inspirational. Please let me know if you can't hear it. It hasn't started yet, but.
In the capacity of the community to be able to welcome families to a place of...
Sorry. There we go.
We have no hesitation in the capacity of the community to be able to welcome families to a place of sanctuary and safety.
If anyone's in trouble, we'll do our best to pull together and help them out of it. We all saw the images of what was happening, you know, in the Mediterranean. You were donating money, but you still didn't feel any better.
I think I can probably remember feeling helpless, and I can't solve the whole Syrian crisis, but I can do something for a few people.
We sat down together and we made a commitment. Said we're going to house a family, and that's it.
We have a responsibility to step up and say we're going to welcome those refugees into our communities, give them a new life and a new future. And community sponsorship gives them a really practical way in.
The community sponsorship scheme is important because it brings communities together and shows that we can all play a role and benefit from supporting vulnerable refugees.
It's the model that's actually being used in Canada right now, where the community is very involved.
This is giving grassroots, ordinary people the responsibility for the entire journey that a family goes on, from when they land at an airport through to them being completely resettled, integrated, happy.
First point for us was to check out whether our community really did want such a scheme, how it would respond.
Not everybody involved is a professional. People like me, with children and young families.
Anybody can prepare a home. Anybody can take somebody to a GP's practice. Anybody can show them the surrounding area.
We've discovered there are people in the community who have all sorts of skills to contribute.
And you put people in touch with each other, and that's what community is all about.
It was great to have lots of people doing little bits rather than a few people doing a lot, and that was quite important. We've got a family of 5, and they're dealing with like 20 people helping them.
Every day, someone comes, some teacher comes. Anything I need, I can call anyone. Here, I feel I'm family.
Any community group just coming together can make it happen. Just the power of the people.
This is for all sorts of local voluntary groups.
It's as simple as having a group of people who are saying we want to make a difference, and after that you get the help of experts in refugee resettlement.
The process of choosing suitable families for community sponsorship could not be more rigorous. Security screening, the medical checks, the training that the family undergoes in the Middle East before they get here.
The thing about the community sponsorship groups is that it starts from the grassroots and grows gradually. It's not as though something is coming in and being planted on top.
The experience that we've had in Canada is that community-sponsored refugees tend to do really well, integrate very quickly into their host community. But the other thing is that the host communities are transformed by these refugees.
This crisis will define our moment in history.
At 5 minutes to 5 this evening, I had a phone call from the Home Office to say that we've done all the paperwork, that the agreement has been signed, and that a family will now be identified for us.
It is personal to help people be at home here in a place that I absolutely love. So that's my absolute dream, really.
It is a blessing when you get an opportunity to help someone else.
We all human, and we have a duty to be there for them. It's always about whether or not you want to be an observer of what's happening around you, or whether you want to be a participant in the world around you.
And this is another part of just being part of a global community, being aware of other people and ourselves. And the reciprocal relationship is really exciting.
This is the future for my children here. I do anything to help this country.
I really, really hope it encourages people to do it and follow the same system that we have.
I know people say what you're doing is a drop in the ocean, but then the ocean is made up of drops.
So that is community sponsorship. Very, very quickly. I don't normally go that quick on a presentation. So if you have any other questions or think of anything in the future, please do reach out to us at Reset.
Thank you so much, Julia. That was amazing. And I have just a few minutes to complement Julia's wonderful presentation on community sponsorship and just provide an insight into the involvement of the Church of England in the scheme. So I'll try to share my screen. Let's see if I... okay, just 1 second. Okay. Okay. Share, please. Okay, yes. Share. I'm going to, okay, make it big. And here we are. Can you see the presentation? So we are talking about safe and legal routes. We are talking about safe ways to come to the UK. And we are talking about doing justice to all those who are stranded in dangerous situations across the globe. Community sponsorship is the only, at the moment, community-led welcome in the UK with a global reach, as Julia said. We can really help bringing people across the world who are in danger to the UK. So I would like you to think about community sponsorship as a map. Because most of us are born with a map. It is a gift that's given by our family, and this gift of a map, it helps clear our way, make us aware of the fall, and guide us through the right path. These maps, they guided generations over generations to overcome the obstacles, to nurture the future and navigate life inside out. Those very maps have no use when people cross borders, because families who are forced to flee from their homes leave their maps behind. And so community sponsorship groups, we have here many community sponsorship groups. We have Canterbury Welcomes Refugees on the call. They donate their maps to help others find their feet. There are 24 community sponsorship groups associated with the Church of England in the UK, and I'm going to skip, but I will forward the video on the Diocese of Guildford, who is doing an amazing job on community sponsorship. So what are those maps that community sponsorship groups provide? They provide a place of welcome. They help a building, they help an accommodation to become a home. They help families who have been forced to flee to find safe employment, to finding belonging and making friends, adapting to a new culture and exploring ways of being part of a community and being valued. At the beginning of 2023, we did, as Church of England, a survey with our community sponsorship groups, and we found out that to form a group, community sponsorship groups are made up of 5-8 people, or as Julia said, 12. It's really unique. There is no one way of doing community sponsorship. And then there is the application to the Home Office, and there is help from Reset, can review the application, can guide you through all the inside out of the applications. And there is, you know, for those of you who would like to be in touch with me, I would love to offer some support with that. And then community groups need to fundraise £9,000. And we have, for Church of England groups, we know that 99% of those groups found this a very easy target. And then people coming through community sponsorship, they have indefinite leave to remain and access to the welfare support as any other family in the same situation. And so community sponsorship group, they need to find an accommodation for 2 years. However, the family will be able to pay rent for that, possibly with the help of a compassionate landlord who could rent at housing allowance rates. And then 1 year of integration support to help the family find interdependence. And I can say that 100% of community sponsorship groups find this a transformative experience. So that's my email address if you want to be in touch. And thank you so much. Okay, now we have times for Q&A. If you can pop your question in the chat, and then our wonderful Will from the Home Affairs team will pick some questions for the panelists. Thank you.
Can I just quickly respond to Nadine?
Of course, there are questions already. Please, Julia.
So this isn't a great answer, let me say that, because I'm not completely sure what the exact numbers are. I can find out though, and I could definitely let you know. But what I will say is that we still see the majority of families coming from Syria, I would say, even though it is a broader global reach, we're still seeing mostly Syrian families. We do see, we have had some Afghan families welcome, but that's through a different scheme. So there's also the Afghan Citizens Resettlement Scheme, where you can welcome Afghan families that were working with the UK government before the fall of the Taliban. And then Ukrainian, so that's a separate program as well. So that's Homes for Ukraine. And we have, gosh, I don't know the number, but it is high for how many Ukrainians that have been matched to to being hosted in people's homes in the UK. But I will find out more exact numbers and I can let you know.
I'd be really grateful for that as the member of the Church of England who started the community sponsorship scheme for the Church of England. I really need to keep tabs on this because that's not what I'm hearing on the ground. So if I could have the spread, Domenica has my email address.
Thank
I'd be
you,
very
Nadine.
grateful.
Thank you. I will. We will.
Does
Okay.
anybody else have any questions that they'd like to ask at this point? I will very happily ask a question of my own then. I wondered, we have a question from Dilys. Dilys, do you want to unmute and ask it to the panel?
Yes, we'll do. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Dilys Allen. I work alongside Domenica and Will. My question is really about the fact that, you know, we've seen what communities can do, you know, really inspiring stories. Great to hear from the panel. Thank you so much. And of course, there are lots of politicians right now whipping up anxiety about asylum and refugees, but we seem to be so poor at putting the opposite view across. There are people who care. There are probably lots of people in the middle who don't ever even really think about it. And some of those people, if they only, you know, understood a bit more, could be won over to a more compassionate point of view. And I just, it feels as though it's the hardline, more right-wing voices that have the stage all to themselves, really. And, you know, I sometimes think Gary Lineker is like a football pundit is perhaps the most persuasive person we have in the UK right now, making the case for a compassionate approach. Now, so I suppose it's a sort of, I just sometimes despair at the fact that all of the narrative seems to come from one side, and we just do such a bad job of countering that.
Thank you so much, Dilis, and welcome. I just would like to introduce Dilis Alam. Dilis is the Home Affairs, as a National Home Affairs advisor for the Church of England. So thank you so much, Dilis. Okay, so perhaps we have one more question, and yes, Nadine.
Sorry, I don't want it to be about me. I think really, and welcome, Dilys. And first, I'd just like to say, on behalf of all of us listening, thank you to all those wonderful presentations from the panel. I think the depressing thing is that for those of us who were met in Brussels for the first time in 2017, and we were all so gung-ho and so full of enthusiasm and drive to get community, well, not just community resettlement within communities, I'm going to put it that way, right across Europe. And so to hear particularly presentations from Holland and from France is so, I've watched it decline, and it's so depressing. But as Dilys has just said, there are lots and lots of people out there, but you trying to get those stories into the press and onto the news. I mean, I've been campaigning since 2013 to stop the BBC calling refugees illegal migrants. I've got absolutely nowhere, and I'm not alone in doing that. And so I just want to say, however, I mean, I know that part of North Holland quite well, and yes, it's not anywhere I'd want to be a refugee in. No disrespect to it, I loved it, but then I'm a European, and I knew it quite well. I just think it's really important that we try and maintain these links, because we are better together, as we say up here in Liverpool. So whether that's working ecumenically or interfaith-wise or in wider civil society, we need to sing from the same song sheet. I'm not going to use the word hymn. And so just because it can feel quite isolating at the moment, because that populist rhetoric is being repeated in the Eastern Länder of Germany, in France, right across Europe. And that's quite scary, because we all know what happened last time.
Nadine, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm just conscious of time, and I would like to ask one question with a very quick answer to all our panelists. And the first question is the same, but I would like from Bishop Paul to start. And Bishop Paul, what gives you hope as you face the future?
So what gives me hope actually is local communities doing this on the ground. I'm less worried about the national press than some people, because actually because when people meet refugees on the ground, they see a different story, they hear a different story, they respond differently, and that's what we've got to keep doing.
Thank you so much, Bishop Paul. Rico, what gives you hope as you face the future?
Yeah, it might sound similar, but I can't say anything else, because as working with A World of Neighbours, it's just and with you here, you see that there is people out there doing the work, and if you feel you lose your vote when you're voting, just vote for the people who are doing the work. And if you feel you're losing voice, then let's give a voice to the people who are doing the work, because they're there and they will not go away. None of the people that are doing the work intend to go away. I mean, they're overburdened at some point, but they will be catched or supported. So we're not going anywhere.
Thank you, Rico. Thank you so much. Marta, I'm coming to you. What gives you hope as you face the future?
So actually, we have a clear message also from Jesus. So welcome the stranger is a Christian value, and whoever claims so states the opposite is not Christian. So it gives me hope, and also that lot of people on the ground are joining in on the field work. So me as a practitioner, I experienced joint effort and the spirit moving, and we could in this whole economically bad situation set up a new and prospering new initiative, and a lot of people, citizens, friend cycles, churches, schools are doing with us for 1.5 years now, and one secondary grammar school each day brings us something, because they continue to support us day by day since the war broke out. It's great.
Thank you so much, Marta. And Julia, what gives you hope very quickly?
Very quickly, I'm gonna have to echo Bishop Paul and say community-led welcome, because I hadn't even heard of community sponsorship before I started working for Reset, and just I just think it's incredible, and I think if we can spread the awareness, I think it would have a tremendous impact.
Thank you, Julia. And Braden, what gives you hope as you face the future?
Yeah, it's connected to the other answers too, but it's when things get personal, or I think it's I mean, it's the people on the move, the refugees and asylum seekers that somehow, I mean, we can get down, we can get depressed, but like they've gone through such darkness and are still kind and still generous and open and caring for us too. So I think for me, it's that I mean, the kingdom of God is present in them. They're ambassadors of heaven, and they're Jesus amongst us. So I think as long as we stay together, and that's I think the transformative power of meeting Jesus in refugees, I think is the thing that'll change everything in the end.
Thank you so much, Braden. I would like to thank all the panelists and all of you coming who joined us tonight. Thank you so much, Bishop Paul. Thank you, Marta. Thank you, Rico. Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you, Braden. Thank you, Julia. And we will share the recording thank you. You give me hope. The community-led welcome gives me hope, and we wish to you all a wonderful, wonderful Christmas, and a fulfilling, empowering, transforming 2024.